They say grief changes people, but I never expected it to consume someone. I was hired last October to fix up an old Victorian home in the town of Ashmere, deep in the Pennsylvania woods. The place belonged to a woman named Mrs. Eleanor Vance, a widow, recently bereaved. Her husband, a prominent historian, had died just 6 months before in an alleged fall from the attic stairs. I didn't ask questions. People die in old houses. Wood rots, steps collapse. From the moment I stepped onto that property, I felt unwelcome. The trees seemed to lean in, like they were eavesdropping. The wind was always whispering, always cold. The house itself was a relic, ornate, creaking, and far too silent, as though it had learned to breathe when no one was watching. Mrs. Vance was a woman in black, always black, a veil even indoors. Her voice was slow and deliberate, like she weighed each syllable before letting it go. Her eyes never quite met mine. When she spoke of her husband, it was always in the present tense.
He dislikes sunlight. He doesn't care for strangers.
The attic was off limits. She made that clear.
You may work anywhere but there.
She said one morning, her fingers curled tightly around a teacup.
That space is private.
I should have left then, but I needed the work. She paid well, and I'd already taken the job. The first strange thing happened on the third night. I was in the dining room repairing a cracked window frame when I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, above me, in the attic. I paused, holding my breath. They weren't the shuffling steps of someone walking. They were dragging, like something was being pulled across the floor. I climbed the stairs and stopped just outside the attic door. The air was freezing. My breath fogged in front of me, but the dragging sound had stopped. When I returned to the hallway, I saw Mrs. Vance, standing completely still at the other end, hands folded, head tilted slightly like a crow.
He doesn't like to be disturbed,
she said softly. Each day that followed, the house seemed to change subtly. Rooms I'd already worked in looked different. The wallpaper near the attic staircase began to peel in the shape of long, vertical claw marks. In the kitchen, I found silverware bent in half, laid out like crosses. Mrs. Vance grew stranger. She would sit for hours in the parlor, whispering to the empty rocking chair across from her, smiling like she was being told a joke. One morning I came in and found her in the hallway, clutching a bundle of cloth. She looked up at me, eyes wide and wet.
He asked me for a gift,
she said.
Something that still beats.
I just nodded and went back to the job. It all came to a head a week later. I was working on the banister when I dropped my hammer. It bounced down the steps and disappeared under the attic door, which had been left slightly ajar. I hesitated. Then I pushed the door open. The air inside was thick and wet, like I was walking into a mouth. The room was pitch dark except for a flickering oil lamp in the corner. Shadows danced wildly. The floorboards creaked with each step. There were books stacked in strange formations, circles of salt, broken mirrors turned inward. In the center, a makeshift altar, black candles melted into the floor, surrounding a faded photograph of Mr. Vance. His eyes scratched out violently. Behind me, the door slammed shut. Something moved in the darkness. Not quickly, slowly, cautiously, like it knew it had time. I turned and saw a figure crawl from the shadows, elongated, arms too long, jaw unhinged. It wore Mr. Vance's clothes, but the face was a sagging mask of skin, stitched crudely where the mouth had been. Its chest heaved, ribs visible through gray flesh. It didn't speak. It only tilted its head, mimicking the gesture I'd seen Eleanor make. Then it raised one hand and pointed at me. I ran. I don't remember how I got the attic door open. I only know that I flew down those stairs, through the hallway, and burst out of the house into the cold night air. I didn't go back for my tools. I didn't go back for my truck. I just ran straight through the woods until I reached the gas station 5 miles out. The police found no one in the house. No Eleanor, no corpse, no altar, nothing but dust and silence. They told me the house had been abandoned for months. Mrs. Vance was found dead in her bathtub, weeks after her husband's funeral. Suicide. They'd buried her right beside him. But I spoke to her. I worked for her. I will never go back there. I never intended to stay long in Daggers Hollow. I was just passing through, another stop on my aimless road trip after the divorce. Small towns have a way of clinging to the bones, though. It was the widow who made me stay. Her name was Margaret Bellamy. She lived on the edge of town, in a withering house wrapped in ivy and the scent of damp leaves. Locals said she hadn't been right since her husband died, claimed she was cursed. I didn't believe in that kind of talk. Not then. I met her in the churchyard. I was reading tombstones, sipping cheap gas station coffee. She appeared beside me like she'd risen from the mossy ground, dressed in gray with a veil that fluttered despite the still air.
"That one was my husband,"
she said, pointing with one gloved hand at a stone chipped with time.
"buried before the ground was ready."
Her voice was soft but hollow, like wind through an empty bottle. I didn't know how to reply, so I just said, "Sorry." She smiled.
"Are you staying long?"
Something in her tone made my skin tighten. "Just a few days,"
"Good.
she said.
You'll do."
She invited me to her house the next day, said she needed help moving something heavy from the cellar. I hesitated, but my better judgment was drowned by the syrup in her voice. I followed. Inside, the house was colder than outside. All curtains drawn, all clocks stopped. The wallpaper was yellowed with age, peeling in spots to reveal strange charcoal markings underneath. Scratches, maybe, or writing. She poured me tea that tasted like mold and roses. As I sipped, I noticed every mirror was covered with black cloth. And beneath the sycamore tree, out back, a mound of earth not quite level with the rest of the yard.
"Are you a godly man?"
she asked, stirring her cup though she hadn't added sugar. "I guess I was," I said. Margaret stared into my eyes.
"He believed in things, you know."
I left shortly after that. I should have run. I should have never looked back. That night, I dreamed of the sycamore tree. Its bark peeled like skin, revealing eyes beneath. Something moved under the mound, something that knocked from below. I woke up gasping, my hands streaked with dirt and my feet bare. I'd been sleepwalking. I found a key in my coat pocket the next morning. Brass, old, cold as bone, tied with twine and a note. "For the cellar, he's waiting." I returned to her house. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to prove to myself it was a dream. Maybe I needed to see the horror with my own eyes. She was standing at the top of the stairs when I arrived, eyes brighter than they had any right to be in a face that pale.
"He remembers you,"
she whispered. The cellar door opened with the key. The stairs were steep, slick with mildew. At the bottom, a room of stone and silence. Candles in a ring. A chair in the center. Shackles, rusted but ready. In the corner, a bundle of cloth moved. Something breathed, wet and low. Margaret followed me down.
"He came back different,"
she said. The bundle began to unfold. A skeletal frame covered in stretched skin. No lips, only rows of teeth like barnacles. Hollow eye sockets that wept. It made a sound like metal dragging on bone. I tried to run. Margaret was faster, stronger than she looked. Her fingers dug into my arm like wire.
You'll do.
she hissed again, mouth curling with devotion.
He's hungry. He needs you.
I broke free, shoving her against the wall. She laughed as if joy was splitting her open. I didn't stop to help. I didn't stop to look back. I leapt into the car and drove until I couldn't see trees anymore, until I reached lights and noise and pavement that didn't whisper. But even here, the bruises on my arm festered. Every night since, I've dreamed of the sycamore tree, of Margaret, waiting beneath it, her veil soaked in black, of her husband, rising with arms that bend the wrong way. They knock on my window now, 3 slow taps, every night, always the same. I don't answer. But one day, I will, because I found a second key under my pillow. Not brass this time, bone. I was hired by the estate of Jonathan Calder to catalog his library after his death. Calder was a reclusive poet, never published, barely known, but his handwritten manuscripts had become valuable after his bizarre passing. According to the official report, he'd hung himself in the orchard behind his home. The only witness was his wife, Miriam Calder, the widow. I was to stay at the house for 2 weeks, organizing boxes, documenting books, and digitizing everything for auction. The pay was generous. The house was remote, perched at the edge of a dying forest in northern Vermont. No internet, no cell service, just trees, silence, and the Calder's gray manor. She greeted me in a black lace dress, thin as smoke, her gray hair braided with twine. Her eyes were deep-set, colorless. She didn't speak more than necessary. When she smiled, it felt wrong, like a puppet mimicking kindness.
"Mind the orchard,"
she said on the first night, her voice dry as parchment.
"He still walks among the trees."
I laughed, thinking it poetic. She did not. The house was a tomb. Dust lay thick as velvet over the furniture. Every floorboard moaned. The library was massive, filled with leather-bound volumes and pages stained with candle soot. Most of Calder's writings were obsessions, repeated themes of rot, rebirth, and poetic horror. Odd, but not unexpected for a reclusive writer. But something strange clung to that house. I started hearing things, noises from inside the walls, and whispering at night. Not wind, not mice. Whispers like,
"Feed us."
Once, while cataloging near a tall window, I looked out into the orchard and saw a figure standing among the trees. Tall, pale, unmoving. I blinked, and it was gone. I told Miriam. She only nodded.
"He lingers. He can't let go."
By the 5th day, I noticed something unnatural about the orchard. No birds flew above it, no insects buzzed near the fruit, and the apples, bright red, perfect, never rotted. I picked one. Its skin was cold. When I bit into it, blood ran down my chin. It tasted like rust, like meat. That night, I dreamed of Jonathan Calder. He stood in the orchard, swaying from a branch by the neck, eyes bulging, mouth split open far too wide. As he swung, dozens of apples grew from his fingers, his ribs, his tongue. I woke to find apple seeds in my bed. The next day, I confronted Miriam. I told her about the dreams, the orchard, the whispers.
"You shouldn't have eaten,"
she said simply. "What are you talking about?" I snapped. She stared through me and moved closer, and for the first time, I saw how gaunt she truly was. Skin clung to her skull. Her hands were raw and scratched, dirt still under her nails.
"I fed it for years.
She whispered.
Animals at first, then drifters. Now it wants more.
She smiled again, brittle and cracked.
It wants You.
I left that night, packed everything, got into my car, and sped down the winding road until trees blurred into blackness. But no matter how far I drove, the road kept twisting back toward the house. 3 times I passed the mailbox labeled Calder Orchard. 3 times I saw Miriam in the distance, standing just beyond the tree line, unmoving. My phone wouldn't turn on. The gas never ran out. The clock never changed. I finally stopped when I saw Jonathan. He stood in the middle of the road, barefoot, face split, ear to ear. A noose hung loose around his neck, dragging like a leash. His chest moved with slow, jerking breaths. Behind him, the trees opened like a mouth, and the orchard called. I don't know how many days it's been. I've stopped counting. I'm still in the house, I think, or maybe under it. The trees are louder now. They whisper through the walls. I see faces in the bark. Miriam no longer speaks, just walks the orchard barefoot, humming to the fruit. Sometimes I see her talking to Jonathan, sitting beneath the tree where he died. And me? I've started writing, the way he did. The words come easy now. They grow like vines through my mind. I write in my sleep. My fingers bleed, but I can't stop. The pen is warm, and the ink smells like apples. When I look in the mirror, I see bark at the corners of my mouth, roots beneath my skin. And every night, I dream of feeding on someone new. Someone just passing through. Like you. I moved into the Briarwood apartments because I had nowhere else to go. The divorce had left me broke, half numb, and looking for something cheap and temporary. The building was ancient, yellowed wallpaper, mold in the corners, and the stink of dust soaked into the walls like memory. But it was quiet. That's all I wanted. Until I met the widow in 6B. Her name was Evelyn. She was probably in her early 70s, but she carried herself like someone much younger, tall, poised, with an unsettling stillness. The kind of person who could stand in a room and make it colder just by being there. We passed each other in the hallway that first week, and she stopped dead in her tracks.
"You look just like my husband,"
she said, her voice soft and slurred, like she was speaking through water. I offered a polite smile. "Sorry to hear he passed,"
"He's not gone,"
she said, and then walked away. At first, I chalked her up to loneliness or dementia. She lived alone, barely ever left her apartment. Sometimes I'd hear her talking through the wall, long, quiet conversations that never rose above a murmur. But there was never anyone else in the hallway. No visitors, no footsteps, just her voice, and the occasional sound of something dragging. One night, around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to a knock on my door, a soft, rhythmic knock. I opened it, and Evelyn was standing there, barefoot, eyes glassy.
"He wants to see you,"
she said. I stared at her, trying to find my voice. "Who?" She didn't blink.
"My husband. You remind him of himself. Come."
I said no, of course. I told her to go home, that it was late, and closed the door. I didn't sleep. The next day, I found a package outside my door, a cardboard box, stained and damp, no name. Inside, a black and white photograph of a man in a military uniform, sharp features, squared jaw. He looked exactly like me. Scrawled on the back in faded pen, "My Arthur, 1950. That night, I tried to confront her. I knocked on 6B, no answer, but I heard shuffling behind the door and the low hum of her voice, talking to someone. The next morning, I found deep scratch marks on my door, 5 long grooves, like from nails or claws. I started dreaming of her apartment, always the same hallway, always the same soft voice humming. I decided to break in. I know how that sounds, but I had to know. It wasn't curiosity, it was fear. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I had started to hear whispers in the vents. My reflection would linger a second too long in the mirror, and there was a smell, like copper and wilted roses, creeping into my walls from her side. So, I waited until I heard her leave one afternoon, and I picked the lock. Her apartment was colder than mine, darker, though all the blinds were open, and it stank, like rot trapped in wet cloth. Everything was covered in lace and dust, old wedding photos on every surface, the same man, Arthur, smiling, always with the same eyes, my eyes. In the center of the living room was a velvet armchair, facing an empty wall. In front of it, a shallow bowl filled with dark red water. The carpet beneath it was blackened, soaked through. Flies buzzed in the corners. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw the figure in the bedroom doorway. It was Arthur, but not alive. He was tall, skeletal, his skin leathery and pale as wax. He moved like he'd forgotten how, jolting forward in sudden bursts. His mouth was stretched open, and his eyes had been replaced by something glossy and wrong, like beetles or marbles. He looked at me like I was a mirror, and then he spoke.
Stay with me.
I ran. I told the landlord. He didn't believe me, said Evelyn had died 3 years ago, alone, heart failure, apartment sealed ever since. No one had access. I didn't believe him until he unlocked 6B and let me see inside. It was empty. Dust-covered furniture, cobwebs, a broken ceiling fan. No velvet chair, no bowl, no photos, no smell. But on the far wall, written in something faded and red, were 4 words: "He needs a face." I moved out that night, never went back, but sometimes I see her. Evelyn. She stands across the street from wherever I live now, watching, waiting, her hair perfectly braided, her eyes cold and endless. And every time I look in the mirror, I see Arthur staring back. The resemblance isn't fading, it's growing.